We're again looking at a mock-up of the inside back, the formal back of the of your wine cooler humidor project. This is a piece that I make, which is supplied in the kit. If you've seen any of the other videos, you know that there's a mount and a drain that goes behind this, but we don't have that pictured. What I want to talk about real quickly today would be working on the back and what you would need to know to mount your ducts. Now typically I will ship the package with this duct mounted. It just gets it out of the way. And it depends, you know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It really just depends on what someone's getting from me and what type of kit it is. But in this particular kit, you will typically see this duct mounted. You will probably see this duct not mounted. Okay, so let's move this guy out of the way real quick, and we'll just talk a little bit about the cooler duct and mounting this assembly. This assembly has 5 fasteners. Okay, so if you look around back, again, I've just kind of mocked this up, so I'm missing one here. There are nuts which are essentially bonded to the back of the duct on the inside, so you don't have to worry about those. These are the smaller, the 332 Allens, and again, you don't need to get this stuff real tight. You know, as you can see, I can typically just do this with my fingers, all right? And so this stuff, again, just hand tight. You don't really have to kill it because you actually can tear the nut off the back, which means you can, well, in this particular case, you're going to have access to it if you take it off. You can actually hold the nut, and I don't need to bond it. But in some cases, that won't be the case. You'll have a fan or something in front of it, like in this instance. The fan will be in the way. This doesn't open, so there's no way you could get your fingers in there to change that. Now remember, I often conceal access to something, and this nut in particular and this screw in particular is a good example. If I take this off, it'll start to spin because there's actually a loose nut on the opposite end of this. So let's just take a look at that here real quick. Just going to loosen these guys up. Now be mindful that, you know, you can actually run these nylon fasteners in and out a number of times unless they're being screwed into another nylon fastener. And most of these will have a stainless steel fastener on the back side. That's why they're so easy to work. Okay? So let's take this out real quick and lift this off. And as you can see, there's actually a serrated tooth large flange nut which is going to hold the top of this assembly in place. Now, since all of this stuff does come off of a CNC, these holes are all in the right place, so it's not, in one of my assemblies you typically don't have something, this is not IKEA furniture, and then you have to drill a new hole to make it fit. If the holes don't line up, then you're doing something wrong, because this assembly will go right back on with all 5 holes perfectly lined up, and it should do it every single time. Okay. Now, a lot of these fan assemblies, they have standoffs. All right, that's what these guys are right here, and the standoff dimensions will vary. Typically, I like to use about a 1/2 inch standoff. Now, why is that there? Well, obviously, you're going to have this inside a humidor. Like everybody else who's interested in cigars, you seem to never have enough room, and there's always a need to add one more box to your cigar collection. Let's face it, I didn't start doing this yesterday, and neither did you probably. So as you know, maybe you're buying one of my kits to expand your collection, but there's never enough room. Cigar humidor space is valuable. Well, what happens is, you know, typically, especially if you just get that last box and you need to hurry off to pick up your kids, you're going to take that box, you open it, you smell it, you think, oh great, wonderful, and you shove it back into the top of your humidor. So what happens is that box, you might just go boom and push it up against this fan. All right. Well, if you push it up against this fan, now suddenly your humidor has got a functioning issue, because it cannot supply air where it's supposed to supply air at the proper rate. So that's why I use the standoffs. Now, if you really need the room and you're really careful, you could probably pull this apart. You could take the standoffs out, but I don't recommend it. It takes up a small amount of space, but it makes it so that even if you push something up against this, you'll still get airflow and the fan will still function. Now, I do recommend that you leave a couple of inches from the top of the humidor open. Even though, again, I expect that people do cram my humidors just like everyone else's as full as they can get it. You're buying a precision humidor, and the precision humidor requires airflow. If you cut off all the airflow everywhere, then the water can't get where the water needs to go, and the hot and cold air can't get where the hot and cold air needs to go. So it's just a matter of some logic. If you want a nice uniform environment, you need to have enough open space inside your humidor to encourage that. If you don't mind a little bit of variance, 1 degree here, 1 degree there, a couple of RH here and a couple of RH there, there is no perfect humidor. But if you don't mind a little bit more variance, you can shove more boxes into your humidor, and you can rotate them every now and again. I don't recommend that. I recommend that you allow the humidor to function as necessary, and you give it a little breathing room. So that's that. Bear in mind that you should probably set the fan up this way with the 4 fasteners and the 4 standoffs just the way I did, and put them in place. If you try to do them one at a time, you'll drop them. They'll fall in between the fan blades. They'll fall into the bottom, and next thing you know, you're taking something apart that you didn't have to take apart to fish that standoff back out. So that's it. These are finger tight. They're good to go. Now, in another video, I actually showed you a little bit of these standoff blocks and explained what you do with these here real quick. Remember, they're 1.5 by 2, and they are used in an instance to space the bottom at 1.5 inches. I don't think you can see that when you mount. So there is the 1.5 inch standoff. All right, this is how you're going to glue up the back mount assembly, but they're 2 inches on the long side, and guess what? That matches up to this. Oops, wrong fan. That matches up to this fan. Now, these won't exactly flush out to the top, but remember, this is your kit, so it isn't going to be exactly the same for everyone. While my parts are going to be very, very close, because I have a pretty tight standard, I can't say the same for the people who make the wine cooler. So what I would suggest doing here is, once the back mount is fully set up and dry, you can go ahead and dry fit this. You can put a couple of screws in here. You can mount this in the cooler, and I still like to do this while the cooler's on its back. Okay, so cooler's on its back. You got done mounting the back. It's set up and it's dry. This is where you're going to dry fit this guy. Now, this guy has 2 mounting pads. So what I didn't want to do is, I didn't want to essentially mount this rigidly for you and leave you in a situation where, oh geez, it just doesn't fit there. Okay, so I'm going to leave this for you to mount in your cooler, and like I said, I bury fasteners. All right, so in this particular guy, actually the only reason why this little inspection plate is here, I could use something smaller, but I've always left this as an option in case I wanted to add, a second fan, and actually have that fan scavenge from the lower portion of the humidor. Now, I don't do that today because I don't think I need it, but there's where that fastener for this mounting pad is hidden. Okay, loosen this a little bit, and you will notice that this slides back and forth. This is cut in a slot. Okay. Even if there were leakage, there won't be, because as you can see, the plate covers the slot. Okay, so what I want you to do is find the center about and tighten this guy up. Make sure that it's flushed on both sides, Okay, so now this is set down inside your cooler, and down here somewhere is the shelf of the insides of the humidor. Pull off the self-adhesive tape. Again, make sure that these are square so that they don't look stupid. Okay, this one is tightened underneath the fan, so you'd actually have to remove this fan to make sure that it's tight. Okay, take this, gently set it down at the bottom, get it square with these blocks, because this guy will be square, and then just set it in place and go ahead and push it down and make sure that those bond. Okay, now with the fan off and the inspection plate off, when you come back and mount this or get it exactly right, you can move this, because now these mounting pads are stuck to the back. You can move this up and down slightly to just go ahead and fit this so that it either doesn't vibrate against the bottom. You know, maybe just put a thin space down here, and then the shelf literally just fits right over the top of this, okay, if you have the shelf in the lowest position. So that's how you mount this guy. It's pretty simple. Once it's all mounted back up, tighten these nuts, put the fan back on. This fan also has standoffs. This guy obviously does not. It's simply an inspection plate. Put the inspection plate back on, and you're good to go with this assembly. Now, again, like I've told you in other videos, these are stainless steel nuts that are bonded onto the back of plastic. That's not really the easiest thing to do. Actually, stainless steel doesn't bond very well to most things. So just be very careful when you run these screws in. Don't put a lot of pressure on them, and you don't have to get them too tight, because if you just tear the nut off the back, then you're just going to have to rebond them. Okay, these things are not designed to take tons of torque. They're plastic parts. Okay, that's it, and that guy's tight enough. The same with the fan up here. If you get them too tight, you'll begin to bend, bend these assemblies, bend some of the wings on the fan, and you don't need to do that. As you can see, this is something that actually goes into a screwdriver. I don't even use it. I just use my fingers most of the time, because that's really about all that's necessary to make it work. In the next video, we're going to talk about some basic back wiring. I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.